The Fly and the Spider. Rabbi Nachman said, I will tell you about all the journey I took. Once there was a king who waged several difficult wars initiated against him, but was victorious and took many hostages. As he started to tell this story, he said, "But do not expect me to tell you everything, nor that you will understand." The king held a great banquet every year on the anniversary of his victory, and there all the ministers of the kingdom were present, including all the nobles of the land. As is the custom for kings, they performed comic plays, and in them they made light of all the nations, including the Arabs and all the other nations. They mimicked and parodied the costumes and behavior of every nation, and it can be assumed that they also mocked the Jews. Then the king commanded to be brought the book wherein were written all the costumes and behavior of each nation. To whatever page he opened, he saw written there the costumes of and behavior of a nation, very similar to the plays of the comedians, for it can be assumed that those who performed the comedies also saw the book. As the king looked at the book, he saw there a spider crawling on the edge of the pages, and on top of the open book stood a fly. Naturally, the spider headed toward the fly. As the spider crawled and came closer to the fly, a wind came and raised up the page from the book, and the spider could not reach the fly. It turned and acted as if it had changed its mind and was no longer interested in the fly. The page returned to its place, and the spider again began to edge toward the fly. Then the page rose, again preventing it from reaching the fly, and it turned back again. This happened several times. After that, the spider again attempted to reach the fly. It crawled until it managed to get 1 foot on the open page. Then the page rose again, with the spider was partly on it. The page then came fully to rest, catching the spider underneath it, between the two pages. It crawled about there, and it remained far down until nothing was left of it. As for the fly, I will not tell you what became of it. The king saw all this and was amazed. He understood that this was not a meaningless incident, but was meant to tell him something. All the ministers noticed that he was staring and amazed by this. He began to ruminate, what does this mean? Then he dozed off over the book. He dreamed that he had in his hand a precious gem. As he looked at it, he saw countless people emerging from it, and he flung the stone out of his hand. Now it is the custom of kings to display their portraits near them, and upon the portrait they fasten their crowns. These people who were emerging from the jam were seizing the portrait and cutting off its head. Then they grabbed the crown and cast it into the garbage. All this was in the king's dream. Then these people were running toward the king to kill him. A page from the book on which he had been sleeping lifted itself up and protected him, so they could not do anything to him. They left him, but when the page returned to its place, they again came at him to kill him. The page lifted itself up again, and this went on several times. The king longed to see which page was protecting him, which people's costumes were written on it. He was afraid to look, and he began to shout, "What a shame! What a shame!" All the ministers sitting there heard and wanted to wake him. However, it is not appropriate to wake the king so. They banged all around him, but he did not hear. In the midst of his dream, a high mountain came to him and asked him, "Why are you shouting so?" "I have been sleeping for such a long time, and nothing woke me, nothing at all. And now you woke me." The king responded, "Should I not cry out when they are coming to kill me? Only this page protected me." The mountain answered, "If that page is protecting you, you need not worry about anything. Many enemies arise also against me, and only this page protects me. Come and I will show you." The mountain showed him that around it stood myriads of enemies, feasting and making merry, making music with instruments and dancing. They rejoiced because one of their divisions came up with an idea how to ascend the mountain. So they were celebrating with feast and music, etc. This happens with each of the divisions. Only this page with the costumes that protects you also protects me. Now, on the top of the mountain was a stone tablet, on which was written the costumes of the nation seated on the page that protected him. However, because of the great height of the mountain, it was impossible to read the writing. However, at the bottom there was another tablet on which was written that he who has all his teeth intact may climb up the mountain. But God caused a certain grass to grow at the spot where the most passed to climb the mountain. Anyone who passed there would lose all his teeth. Whatever one went on foot, on horseback, or in a carriage, all his teeth would fall out. There were piles and piles of teeth there, like mountains. Then the people who had come out of the jam, the portrait restored to its original condition, picked up and washed off the crown, and then put them in their places. Then the king awoke and immediately looked to see which page had protected him, which costumes from which people were on it. He saw the costumes of Israel written there. He began to look at the page with an eye of truth and perceived the essence of the truth. He decided for himself that he would certainly convert to Judaism. The real question was, how would he bring everyone else to the good, to the truth? He decided that he would set out and travel in search of a wise man who could interpret his dream. He took 2 people with him, traveling through the world not as a king, but rather as a simple man. He went from city to city, from country to country, and asked, "Where can be found a wise man who would interpret a dream according to its real meaning?" They told him, "In such and such a place there is such a man." He went there and came to the man and told him the truth, that he was a king who had won many wars and all the above story. Then he asked him to interpret his dream. The man answered, "I myself cannot interpret it. However, there is a certain moment, on a certain day, in a certain month, when I gather up all the spices of the incense and compound a specific blend, and I give someone to inhale this incense. That man concentrates upon what he would like to see and know, and then he will know it all." The king thought to himself, "Seeing that I have already expended so much time on this, I will wait until that day in that month." When the day came, the wise man did as described and gave him to inhale the incense. He began to see even what had happened to him before his birth, when his soul had been in the upper world. He saw that they were leading his soul through all the worlds and announcing, "Whoever has a complaint against this soul, come forward." But no one had any complaint against him. Just then, someone came running and cried out, "Master of the world, listen to my prayer. If this soul comes into the world, what will there be for me to do? And if so, then why did you create me?" The one who cried these words was the evil one. The answer came, "This soul must inevitably come down in the world. You will have to find your own solution." So he left. They continued to lead the soul through the worlds until they brought him to the upper court to make him swear that he would descend to the world. The one mentioned before, the evil one, still had not arrived, so they sent a messenger after him. Then he appeared with an elderly man who was stooped over in the way of the elderly. The evil one had already been acquainted with him. He laughed and said, "I have already found myself a solution. The soul may now descend to the world." The soul was then released and it descended into the world. The king then saw all that he had been through. from beginning to end, how he was made a king, and the wars he had fought, etc. He took captives, and among them was a beautiful woman who had all of the graces of the world. However, this grace was not hers, but because she wrote a precious gem, because she wore a precious gem which had all types of grace, for which reason it appeared that she had all these types of grace. No one is able to ascend that mountain except for wise and rich men, etc. More than this he did not say, and there is much more to this. From the words, "and he took captives," until the end was not written as clearly as it had been told. Notes: a song for David when he fled from Avshalom his son. Psalms 3. Lord, how great are my torments, many rise against me, etc. And you, Lord, protect me, you are my honor, and raise up my head. My voice will cry out to Lord, and he will answer me from his holy mountain. Referring to the mountain in the story. I lay down and slept, and I was awoken. As in the story, I will not fear from the multitudes of people, etc. For you smacked all my enemies in the face. You broke the teeth of the wicked. For when they tried to ascend the mountain, their teeth would fall out. Your blessing is upon your people. Selah.